All right, it's time to prove that God exists in 3 more ways. You guys ready? My name is Jacob Hubbard, and this is Freedom Chapter 22, brought to you by Incarnate Ministries, based out of St. Thomas Aquinas in Pilot Point, Texas. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and joining us. And so just a reminder, we're doing a mini-series right now that's bringing us from God's existence to attributes about Him, to understanding of evil, and then ultimately to the understanding how the rules and the regulations that God gives us in the Ten Commandments especially actually are for our own good and actually set us free. And so today is the second video in that series, and so we're going to be arguing 3 more ways by which we can reason that God exists. So the Catholic Church teaches that we can reason to God's existence with our intellect alone. And so we're going to hopefully show 3 more ways by which we do that today. So those arguments, one is the argument from contingency, the other one is the argument from degree, and then the last one is the argument from final ends. All right, so let's look at the argument from contingency. So it's actually pretty similar to the one that we did in the last video of efficient causality, but there are some distinct differences. So first, again, we need to understand what it means to be contingent. And so St. Thomas Aquinas would say that everything in the world that we experience and see is contingent, which means that we can, it does not explain itself. We can imagine a time when it was not. So ultimately, can I explain why I exist? I can say, well, my parents, they caused me to exist. Well, what caused them to exist? And that can't go on infinitely. Even with the rocks, why do rocks exist? Why does the sun exist? We think that the sun, it brings us heat and light and warmth. And yes, that's very true, but that's telling us what it does, not actually justifying its existence. So it's not some scientific reasoning well, A, B, C, this is why the thing exists. No, it's why does it fundamentally exist? There's no way that there's no necessity to it. I don't have to be. The sun doesn't have to be. This couch doesn't have to be. Those crosses don't have to be. This camera doesn't have to be. Nothing has to be, right? And so St. Thomas Aquinas takes that idea and extends it to everything, and then says that since nothing had to be, if there were not something that necessarily had to be, then there would be nothing right now. Because something had to bring everything from contingency into actual being, right? So we all rely on a necessary explanation and a necessary thing for us to exist in the first place. So we cannot explain our own existence, but God can justify and explain His. And so He is the one that causes everything to be at every single moment. So you can see how it's very similar to the last argument, but it is different because this one's actually perhaps even tighter than the last one, because all that we have to prove with this one is that things cannot explain themselves, that there's a sliver of a chance that something cannot justify itself ultimately, and with that sliver we can then bring about, we can prove God's existence from that. So really good argument. So the first 3 kind of mirror each other, and then the 4th and the 5th break off into totally different sections. So we'll jump into those now. So the 4th way is the argument from gradation of being, or as I like to call it, just degree. And so it's pretty simple. It's that in the world we see that there's a degree of good, better, best, and I'm not talking just kind of arbitrarily of how we as humans signify good, better, best, but I'm saying on a philosophical fundamental level, a picture of a painting is worse than the actual painting, right? Mother Teresa is better than a dung beetle, right? And humans are better than rocks, because humans have intellects, right? And rocks don't. So they are on an ontological level, and that's a big word, but it means on the level of them, as they are, by their very nature and being. A human is superior to a rock because it has more capacity, right, than a rock does. And then the last example I like to use is that dogs are better than cats. And it's just a philosophical truth, we can't question that. So anything that we say is better or worse requires a maximum to which we reference when we're saying better or worse. And so the example that I like to use with this is heat, right? And so we say that something is hot or cold, or hotter or colder than something else, based on the hottest thing that we've experienced, right? And for most of us, that's when you accidentally bump the shower handle, and then you go from a nice warm sauna into the fires of Gehenna, right? And so like that maximum heat is the reference by which we understand if something is cooler or warmer than everything else. And so it's in the same way that there needs to be a maximum, and not just a maximum, but a maximum that caused all other maxes, like heat, light, being, goodness. There needs to be a maximum that caused all of that in order to justify those things actually being. And this we call God. So that's the argument from degree. So the fifth argument, or the fifth way, is, and it's the last one that St. Thomas works out here, it is the argument from design. In this world, we see things that are moved, that themselves are unintelligent, like they do not possess an intellect or a free will, and then we see them moved to intelligent ends. So what am I saying here? I'm saying like a sunflower. We see a sunflower bends toward the sun, right? We see birds, they migrate south for the winter to stay warm, right? We see Venus flytraps that close on flies whenever a fly lands on them. And some people say, okay, well, obviously this just like evolution. Evolution can explain away this. Well, we've already talked about how the supernatural and the natural are actually not opposing in any sort of way. Like the supernatural is above the natural. And we can say here, like, yes, perhaps we can say that evolution has helped these animals and things to learn these behaviors, but who is the being that designed all of everything with the possibility to even be able to evolve, right? Like we talked about in the first argument, that like God moves things from potency into actuality. Who's the God or the being that designed everything so that it could actually evolve, right? There's no explanation for that. And so that we call God. And the analogy that St. Thomas Aquinas uses for this is just as an arrow is shot to an end by the archer, and the arrow itself is unintelligent, right? And it has like really no control over what it's doing, but it's flying toward a target. And if you just looked at the arrow, you'd say, wow, that's intelligent, right? Like it's clearly doing something. It's hitting the target. Well, it's shot by an intelligent archer, and that is God, right? He is the archer that shoots everything toward its intelligent end, so like toward the fulfillment of what it's supposed to do. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Again, today's challenge is just think over these three arguments, see which one's the most convincing. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments of which argument you guys like the most so far, which ones you don't understand, which ones you just outright hate or whatever, right? And I'd just love to hear from you guys. Again, you can always reach me in incarnateministriesus@gmail.com as well. And so thank you guys. Have a great day.